Today, I'm speaking with an absolutely amazing individual. JeVon McCormick is the CEO of Scribe Media. He's also top ranked with the Glassdoors, got Ernst Young Entrepreneurs of the Year, best CEO in Austin, best culture company in America. Phenomenal person, phenomenal leader, and also the author of Modern Leader. Enjoy the conversation with JeVon McCormick. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. Today, I think after almost 130 episodes, I'm going to have a conversation with probably the most fascinating person I've ever met. And no disrespect to all the people I talked to before. You're going to hear what I'm saying about it. He's just amazing. His personal story is fascinating. His professional story is fascinating. He's been awarded, I don't know how many prizes in management. He's got 93% on Glassdoor. He's got Ernst Young recognition. He's the best CEO in Austin, the best company culture in America, and so on and so forth. He's the CEO of Scribe Media. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only McCormick. JeVon, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
My man, Eric, you rolled all that off, and I've been here thinking something. I just do right by people. That's kind of all I do.
That's what you say, and that's right. That's what you do. But I guess a lot of people have a lot of lessons to learn from you. But let's start with the beginning, if you don't mind. I knew about you. I follow you on LinkedIn. I had the amazing pleasure of listening to you at MMT. In July that our friend Jason Gagnard put together. And you just started on stage. It was like, to me, a punch in the stomach. And you are absolutely phenomenal. So what is your journey? How does life started for you?
Oh, how does life start? Life started for me with a Black father who was a pimp, and a white mother who was an orphan. She was raised in an orphanage from close to birth to when she turned 17 years old. They gave her $20, a small suitcase, and told her good luck, and they, kicked her out of the orphanage. And so my mother was white, dad was Black, and my mother was one of my dad's prostitutes. So that's kind of how I came into the world. Eric, I was only born because I tell people I'm a product of a bad abortion. Back in 1970, when my mother got pregnant the first time, abortion was still illegal. And so a pregnant prostitute's no good to a pimp. So my dad took my mother to have an illegal abortion. And as my mom described to me, it was so bad that the second time she got pregnant, which was with me, she decided to take her chances raising a child versus go through that abortion again. And I still sit back and think to myself, my God, that must have been just a horrific experience that you chose to raise a child when my mother was technically still a child and had no clue how to raise herself. So, in many ways, we raised each other because we were learning things together for the first time a lot. But yeah, that's who I came into the world with, half white, half Black. For some of your listeners that may not know, back in the 70s, that was not a good look. That was not a good look. Black people didn't like me because I was half Black. White people didn't like me. Black people didn't like me because I was half white. White people didn't like me because I was half Black. And I was constantly trying to fit in, trying to belong. And I was in and out of juvenile prison 3 different times, sexually molested by one of my dad's prostitutes at the age 6, 7, 8 years old. She used to force me to perform oral sex on her. I was abandoned. My dad had 23 children. I'm one of 23. My mother only had me, but my dad had 23. And I was abandoned in a house. I was 12 with 3 of my half siblings. They were 4, 3, and 2. And we were just abandoned for three weeks in Dayton, Ohio, February. No one knew we were there. No one came looking for us. And once I was actually reunited with my mother, because I was separated from her from the ages of 9 to 15. I got reunited with her at 15. She took me to enroll in school. Eric, man, that's when everyone realized, okay, this kid's not too bright. And so they had me tested, man. I was testing on a 5th and 6th grade level at the age of 15. Of course, what did that lead to? I never graduated high school. I had to go to summer school to get my GED. Never went to college. I have no college degree. Here I am, man.
I'm just okay. Again, completely speechless. And for those who know me, that doesn't happen very often. Not only that you've been through that, but you're such an inspiring person. You're telling the story that, oh, it's a blue sky outside. And in just a way, how did you overcome that, first of all, on a personal basis? Psychologically speaking, I'm sure that kids are always very tough everywhere in the world for those who are not like them. So, my goodness, how did you go through that?
Eric, the one piece I've always given my mom credit for the streets of Dayton, Ohio, is I learned to survive, man. I was taught to survive, but I had to teach myself how to thrive. And there's a big damn difference. I know how to survive, but I had to teach myself how to thrive. But as a kid, you're learning these lessons, and what happens as a child, you don't always know there's something different. So you just kind of assimilate and do what's going on. So you've heard so many people say this. At times, I didn't know I was poor. Because if you see everybody else around you's in poverty and struggling and things of that nature, then you just, okay, this is how it goes down for everyone. So, as a kid, you see those things, but you do start to learn that there are things different. I think the first time for me was, in the 70s here, there was, you remember busing. They would take the inner city kids and bus them out to the suburbs, to the quote unquote nicer schools. And that was really one of the first times I thought, oh man, like how I'm living is very different than how you all are living. And that was an eye opener. And then at 10 years old, and this was truly a game changer for me. My dad, we were in Houston at the time, living in Houston in an hourly rate motel. And he drove me through this ultra affluent neighborhood called River Oaks, 5, 10, $25 million homes. And Eric, I had never seen such massive homes that one family lived in. Like the projects I lived in weren't as big as some of these homes, and one family lived in these homes. Why that was a game changer for me, it showed me what was possible. Because up until then, I didn't know those things existed. And the beauty of this as well, Eric, what I realized is growing up in United States extreme poverty, because extreme poverty outside this country is totally different. So I grew up US poor, and there's a big damn difference, but I grew up, poor in the United States nonetheless. And the beauty of that is I grew up in poverty. And then when I saw those homes in that neighborhood, that became the goal. What was so beautiful about that, Eric, is as a people, we mirror a lot of what we see. So if you're from a 2-parent home, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage, maybe your parents went to college, maybe one of them went to college, whatever the case may be, you tend to aspire to the things that you see around you. Well, because I never saw the quote unquote middle class, any of it, low, middle, high, none of it. All I knew was poverty and wealth. So the goal became wealth. And I didn't even stop to try to visit the middle class. I just wanted to be wealthy. And I see that as a blessing. I see that as an amazing thing, because that became the standard for me. Was, okay, we're going to go get that. I don't know how, but I'm going to have one of those houses one day.
And when did you start working? What was your first job? And if you can take us through JT McCormick before
all right,
became again JeVon, those stories about not getting the appointment and then suddenly changing that. Fascinating to me.
So my first job after I got my GED was cleaning toilets at a restaurant. And I would come in each morning, 9 a.m. And I had to clean the toilets from the night before. So, the evening crowd, the rush, and the toilets were always filthy. And so my job was to clean the toilets. And I remember, I don't know, maybe a month or two into the job, who likes to clean toilets? But I remember thinking to myself, okay, if this is my job, I'm going to have the cleanest toilets in the state of Texas. And it was that moment I said, okay, everything I do, I'm just going to set out to be the best at it, no matter what I'm doing. So right now, I have to clean toilets. These are going to be the cleanest toilets everywhere. But from there, I ended up, my mom helped me get a job at the insurance company. I mean, we're talking truly entry level. I was the mail boy, file clerk. Eric, you'll appreciate this. My first job, I made $10,000 a year.
Wow.
and so I had been at the company, at the insurance company, I don't know, 4 years. And I'm like, man, there's got to be more than this. I want to do something else. I had aspirations. There had to be more. I had seen that house, and I'm like, okay, this is not going to get me that house. So I put my little resume together, and this is back in the day. It's the early '90s where you actually had to work to get work. And what I mean by that, there was no just upload a resume and quote unquote hope for the best. No, you actually had to go out, make cold calls, show up at people's doorstep, hand your resume off, follow up. And so, I'm out there on the grind. I'm doing all those things. And Eric, man, I could not get a call back. I couldn't get any appointments. I couldn't get any invites, nothing. And so one day, nice white guy picks up the phone. And the first thing out of his mouth, he says, hey, how did you get a Black first name, JeVon, and an Irish last name, McCormick? Well, Eric, because my mother was raised in an orphanage, I don't know where my last name comes from. So that was the first time I had ever heard that my last name was Irish. So I was like, yes, this is amazing. My last name's Irish. How cool is that? But then I hung up the call and I said, oh, okay. It's because they see my first name, JeVon. And so that day, my full name's JeVon Thomas McCormick. That day, I edited myself and I said, I'm going to go by JT McCormick because you don't know who that person is. Man, Eric, the next week, appointments, callbacks, invites. Eric, I can't tell you how many times I showed up to an appointment and someone would look at me and say, JT McCormick? And I go, yes. You're not who we expected. And I'd say, well, who did you expect? And so, but it was bittersweet, man. It truly was. It was sweet because I got in. I figured out how to, I figured out how to crack that one little part of that broken old corporate playbook. I was like, okay, I got one. I gotta edit myself, change my name. So that was the sweet part. The bitter part was, man, I had to edit myself. I can't even use my name to get in here. And I'm like, that sucks. And so from there on, man, throughout my entire career up until the George Floyd murder, man, I built my entire career on JT McCormick. But then the George Floyd murder happened, and I'm watching the disgusting virtual signaling that was going on in our country. We were blackout Tuesday on social media. What the hell does that do to progress anything, to make any change? And then Eric, we were arguing over a syrup bottle. A syrup bottle. If that's not the definition of fake ass empathy, I'm like, come on, a syrup bottle, like what? Come on. But here's what jumped out to me more than anything. I read a piece that there were only three Black Fortune 500 CEOs. And so I said, oh, wow, who? And so I went and looked up their names. Roger Ferguson, Marvin Ellison, Kenneth Frazier, and as a bonus, the wealthiest Black man in America is named Robert Smith. And so I smiled. I said, those are four very ethnic free names, if you will. And so to your point of all the things you read off about me in the beginning, all the credentials, awards, and all that, I'm like, okay, I'm not a Fortune 500 CEO, but okay, we've done some things over here at Scribe. I won a couple little awards, whatever. And so I said, look, I'm going to reclaim my name because one, I was part of the problem. I kept myself edited, which was the old playbook. And so I was part of the problem. And whatever we're not changing, we're choosing. And so I was choosing to stay part of the problem. So I said, I'm going to reclaim my name. But Eric, I didn't do it for me, man. I did it for every kid out there that comes from the communities that I come from, that has that different ethnic name. Juan, Rosalia, Martavius, Laquanda, Rayvante, all of those kids is why I did it. That, maybe one day when you hit the business world, you can work next to JeVon and not just a JT.
Mm-hmm. And just to give context to people listening, at that time, you're already a very successful person. So it's not something that, when you say you do it really to lead by example, you truly do that. And it's fascinating to see how changing that, you reclaim your own identity. And how did you sleep that night when you first but reclaim your real name and your real identity?
I don't recall how it was that night, but I recall over time, some people would, they read the piece, and the piece was really, really popular because we did a piece about it. And I remember it was very welcomed. For a while, people would still call me JT, and they would say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're going by JeVon." And I'm like, "Hey, man, you can call me whatever you want, just don't call me broke." And so, and because it took time for me to get used to it. I had been referring to myself as JT for so long, so it took me time to get used to it. But it was great because my mom literally throughout. It's interesting. My white mom named me. And, gave me this quote unquote black name, only to find out that my name is actually a French name. And what the name means, I did not know this, is till literally maybe right after I changed it, someone reached out to me that read the piece. They said, "Hey, I don't know if you know this, your name means gift from God." And I was like, "Oh, wow." And I said, "It's deep." But it felt good because I could actually go by who I am, JeVon McCormick. And my mom had been trying for years to get me to go by my name, but I would never change it back. So she passed away in March of this year. So she actually got to see me go by JeVon McCormick.
That's awesome. When I follow you on LinkedIn, and I really encourage everybody's listening now to follow you on LinkedIn, because you post videos or your interviews, very inspiring. You're tackling all the topics that are politically incorrect to speak about. And you have this book, Modern Leader, who's now a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller. You're the CEO of Scribe Media. And in all transparency, I publish my book now before it's too late with your company. And that's nothing to do with it. I'm not paid for that. But I just want to be very transparent with everyone. The reason I'm glad you accept to speak with me today is because of who you are and what you say. But although those videos in LinkedIn, you're tackling different topics that for some people that are really human-centric and are really servant leaders would seem normal, although few companies are doing it. So what are those different elements that got you at 93% on Glassdoor, got you with all those prizes about company culture, and obviously the team recognizing that it's a wonderful place to work for?
It's interesting, Eric. It's simple, yet I don't know why more people don't live by it and operate by it. And it really comes down to put people first. That's it. There's no magic sauce. There's no, here's the top 10 things you know. Put people first. People, process, profits. And with those profits, you do great things for the communities that you live and work in. And, I keep it real. Hey, Eric, there's not a lot going on up here, man. I got GED. I got to keep shit simple, man. So it's put people first, man. It's even when I won those 2 awards that you brought up, I said this on both of those acceptance speeches. When I was named Best CEO in Austin, and then when I won Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year this year, I said this both times when I received those awards, that I find the awards a bit comical. I'm grateful, I'm proud. It's incredibly flattering to win these awards. What I've found to be interesting and literally somewhat funny is we celebrate CEOs and we put them on these pedestals, but CEOs are truly only as good as the great people they get to serve and support. So, yes, do I make some decisions? Oh, yeah. Do I make some hard decisions? Oh, yeah. At times are things taxing, and yes. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter how great my vision and plan are. If I don't have great people to execute that vision and plan, my vision and plan's worthless. And so I live by that. I never forget that. Look, man, you're only as good as the great people you get to serve and support. You're not above anyone. In fact, because of the role that you serve in, you're actually below everyone. You're the foundational piece of the company. Your role is to serve and support. In my opinion, all CEOs, the moment you find yourself making decisions that benefit you first as the CEO, get the hell out of the chair. Walk away from the role, because you're not fit for it. 99.99999% of the decisions you make should never benefit you. It should always be from a place of, okay, how will this impact, serve, and support the people that I serve and support?
You remind me of, I don't know when it was, probably 15, 20 years ago, Ricardo Semler in Brazil, Semco. He wrote the book Semco, where basically he inherited the company from his father, fired most of the leadership, and came up with ideas like every team will hire their own boss. So if you want to be leading a team, you have to be interviewed by the team. And there was said, their objectives. That was just fascinating. So I obviously fully agree with you when it comes to serving the people that work with you. And that's what makes a company great. And as you said, at the end of the day, you're the boss. So you have to make tough decisions. How did you go through COVID, and what happened in terms of team management and culture?
Oh, man, that was March 2020. So again, this is one of those things, man. To me, this is when modern leadership really got tested, because there was no playbook for the virus disruption. There was no playbook for the George Floyd murder. There was no playbook for now. All of a sudden, no one had ever. There was no mass movement for DEI initiatives. So all of a sudden, leadership got tested, and you found and saw the difference between broken playbook leaders and actual leaders. And so here's one, and you asked how did we handle it? One, first and foremost, I didn't wait for any mayor, government entity, or president to tell us to go remote, take care of the people that you serve and support. No, if you were truly paying attention and from a leadership position, I remember I said to the people that I get to serve and support, I'm like, look, here's what this is about to get ugly and go down. Everyone take anything you want from the office to take to your house to build out a comfortable office space that's going to make it very convenient for you to be able to work. No one knows how this is going to go down, but we're going to get ahead of it. And we're going to go ahead and say, everyone just work from home until we figure out what goes on. And we did that long before there was, shelter in place and there was mandates to long. I want to say we were probably about 2 weeks before it was actually a thing. So that was one. And then two, I started getting a lot of messages. We use Slack as a communication tool. I started getting a lot of messages of people sharing with me that a family member had got laid off, or a relative, a spouse got laid off, or a friend. And I read through the messages. What they were saying is, hey, I got a family member got laid off. Are we getting laid off? And that's what they were saying without saying it. Yes. I'm reading through the message. So, man, in that moment, it was really, in my opinion, a defining moment in my career. I made the announcement to everyone that no one would be laid off due to the virus, that we would not reduce benefits, we would not reduce salaries, no one would be laid off due to the virus. And I remember right after I made the announcement to everyone, I sat back in my chair and I was like, oh shit. Now we got to operate through this damn thing. Man, I was checking the bank balance and incoming invoices literally 3 times a day because, it hit everyone. We had authors who were asking to pause their payments, which then that held ripple effects on us. And yeah, I was measuring cash flow. Okay, if we don't do any more business, how long does our cash hold up? How long can we run this party? And so, yeah, that was a hell of a moment. And I still tell people to this day, I'm 51 years old. That was really one of my proudest moments as a leader because it really was all about, okay, how do you put people first and make sure everyone knows that they're going to be taken care of, we're safe, we're secure. I can't control what's going on outside in the world, but I got a little bit of a hand in being able to control some of the things that are going on within the company. And so here's what we're going to do.
Awesome. You mentioned DEI. And yeah, in a very sarcastic way. And in one of your video on LinkedIn, you say you feel for the people who are now responsible for DEI in corporate America. Can you elaborate on that?
DEI. Well, here's what's interesting. I'm gonna really tear this one apart. So first of all, everyone likes to talk. Hey, Eric, what are you doing for your DEI initiatives? DEI initiatives. Okay, so let's pause right there. First of all, DEI is not an initiative. Software implementation is an initiative because there's a start and there's a finish. Diversity, there's no finish line. Just because you hired a chief diversity officer, 13 minorities, and started using pronouns in your email address, you didn't win. Stop celebrating. There's no finish line. First of all, stop calling it an initiative. Second, stop using it as an acronym, because here's what people are doing. DEI. They're saying it because it's easier. Not easier meaning it's a mouthful. So no, you're saying it because when I say diversity, equity, and inclusion, we got to have a conversation. I can't tell you how many people showed up and would ask in interviews, so tell me about your DEI initiatives, making it sound like they were really engaged and they came ready to talk. And I go, okay, well, first of all, stop calling it an initiative. And I give my reason. I go, second of all, you said diversity. What are we talking about? And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm going to give you an example. I can be in a room with 10 middle-aged white men and have diversity. Some are married, some aren't. Some are Methodist, some are Lutheran, some have children, some don't. Some went to college, some didn't. Some are gay, some aren't. I go, so I can have diversity with 10 white middle-aged men. And you should see the looks on people's face like, oh shit, I've never thought of it from that perspective. Right, because you're just buying into the bullshit narrative of DEI initiatives. So when you go down that path, and I've said this repeatedly, my dad's Black, my mom's white. You say diversity in America right now, for the most part, we're talking about Black people. That's what we're talking about right now. When you say diversity, you're talking about Black people in this country. When's the last time you've heard diversity in the Jewish culture, the Jewish people mentioned about diversity, the natives, Asians, gay, transgender? No, you say diversity right now in this country, we're talking about Black people. So again, what I don't care for in the whole DEI initiatives is we've weaponized the word diversity, because at the end of the day, what are we talking about? We're talking about people. When people say, well, we want a diverse mind and a diverse opinions and diversity thought at the table. So all of that comes with what? People. So diversity is nothing more than people. But we've taken this word and we've weaponized it. And so and Eric, man, I don't know if you've read this. Now they're trying to slap on the back of DEI and B. The B standing for belonging. And I'm like, man, you got to be kidding me. Get that shit out of here. And here's why. Belonging implies someone doesn't. Oh, I belong. So someone else doesn't. So again, for us, I don't do belonging. I don't do acceptance. I don't do tolerance. And I do welcoming. We have a culture of welcome. It doesn't matter who you voted for. It doesn't matter how you identify, what pronouns you use, if you believe in God, if you don't believe in God, if you're Asian, Jewish, it does not matter. Will you uphold the company values, perform in your role, drive results? You will? Great. Yes. Welcome. And not only that, not only are we going to welcome you in, we're going to make sure you're continued to be welcomed once you're in, because you got a lot of companies out there talking about how many people they hired. Okay, but how are they treated once they're in? No, nobody wants to report on that part of it. And so, yeah, I'm real big on how we as a country, we jump on the hotness. And so DEI initiatives became this hot thing, but nobody really dove into what are we talking about? We're talking about people.
And I remember you saying that basically the people that are in charge of DEI are a cover for the management.
Eric, think about this. And you can go look them up. The great majority of the Fortune 500 chief diversity officers, the great majority, not all, are Black women. And so the way they have been treated, the chief diversity officers, is, okay, you have a seat at the table. We gave you a C in your title. Sit down there at the end of the table. Shut up. Don't speak unless spoken to. And you can go read. This isn't an opinion. You can go read article after article where chief diversity officers are coming out and saying, yeah, a lot of lip service going on inside companies where they're saying, oh, yes, we've allocated XYZ millions to DEI, only to find out those chief diversity officers are like, hey, I'm trying to move this program forward. I'm trying to create, what we're going to do. And they're not getting any support. It's like, okay, corporate, we checked the box. We hired a minority, got a chief diversity officer. Okay, move on. And that's sad. And like I said, this isn't an opinion of mine. This is fact. You can go look it up.
And, again, what I appreciated is you're telling it the way you think. When we first met, I told you, for me, when I look at DEI, I wonder why are the Jews excluded from it? Because like 2% of the US population, how could that not be considered a minority? And actually, there's an amazing study from Stop Antisemitism that came out yesterday, scorecard, that shows that in most of the DEI program that they call it in the universities, the top university in the US, Jews are excluded. Same thing when I hear about people that are connecting me with whites. And I always have a problem to tick that box in the US. I don't consider myself white. And when you come to white supremacists, well, guess what? The white supremacists didn't like my people either. But
right.
It's a longer conversation. But I appreciate you being so straightforward with those ideas.
Eric, you brought up a good point there. Think of that. You essentially can very much relate to the whole half white, half Black, because like you said, you've got a huge segment of people who view you as white, but white supremacists damn sure don't view you as white. But white supremacists, when it comes to the Jewish people, are the most hateful people. And so that's a hell of a dynamic to think about. Most people would classify you as white, but the people who believe they're the whitest of the white people, the white supremacists, are like, oh, no, we hate you more than anybody.
And I don't think it was you, or maybe I think it was Jason Gagnon when you did that presentation. One of the two of you, man, I think it was Jason. Anyway, one of you said, there is no safe space. There are safe people.
That's it.
And I love that. And in your case, there are safe leaders that allowed people to be who they are as long as they work with each other and serve the customers.
That's it, man. It's there's no safe places, man. There's only safe people.
So modern leader, obviously being a safe leader is one of the aspects. What are the other aspects of a modern leader? And in your case, how did you manage to not only deliver on financial results, but also be highest ranked in Glassdoor and the best company culture in America?
Again, Eric, it always goes back to putting people first, but also doing it different. And you read this in the book. There's so many small nuances. You and I talked about this beforehand. So much of what I put in the book is not revolutionary, but it for whatever reason, why was no one doing it then? Here's one. Every company, we want to recruit and retain the very best people. We want to retain our people. Man, Eric, I'm not trying to retain anybody, man. If you go look up the definition of retain, it says to keep possession of. If that's not some slavery plantation mentality, like I'm not trying to keep possession of anyone. No, we don't want to recruit and retain. So when you say modern leader, a modern leader sees that, no, I don't want to retain people. I want to attract and provide. I want to attract great people, and I want to provide a phenomenal culture, meaningful work, great salaries. So attract and provide, not recruit and retain. So a lot of this is just in the language that we use that's such an antiquated playbook, and some actually does come from the plantation business model, and people don't realize that. And that's not to say, oh, well, everything traces back to race. It's not a matter of making it a race issue. It's a fact of where does the language come from? Mm-hmm. Think about this. Human capital. What the hell is that? Are we trafficking people now? What human capital? Like that's just disgusting. Like I'm not going to refer to people as human capital. Or this, Eric, get this one. We hear people are our greatest assets. No, my trading account is my greatest asset, but people are not. And when you dig into that, assets, and you look at people that way, it takes you right back to the plantation, because it was their greatest asset, because those people who were in the field harvesting, they were an asset to the people who owned those plantations, who owned those slaves, because that's what they were to them, an asset. Those people are our greatest asset. But now in the world we live in the business world, if you're viewing people as your greatest asset, that actually says a lot about your mentality as a leader. And then you hear some people want to oh my God, because that light just got, shown on them. And they're going, no, that's not how I think at all. That's just how it's always been. Well, because that's how it's always been, that's what you've gone with. So guess what you are? You're a playbook leader.
Absolutely. What is your feeling when you actually make that presentation in a former plantation during the conference?
Oh, Eric, yeah. You remember when I was on stage, man, it hit me hard when, this wasn't Jason's fault. I don't even know that he knew.
No. He's such an amazing person. No, for sure not.
He didn't even know. And so one thing that I do whenever I go to speak at a conference, whatever, I always research, where am I going? Where, tell me a little bit about the city, the venue, what am I doing? So I get to South Carolina with my family, and it's raining. So we're in the hotel room. And because I brought my family on this trip, I hadn't had a chance to research it. So because it was raining, I'm like, okay, well, let me sit here and look into this. And I read that it's a former plantation. And I tell my wife, I'm like, you aren't going to believe this. And she goes, what? I go, they brought me out here to talk about modern leader diversity on a former plantation. And she goes, that's a first. I go, yeah, that's definitely a first. And so the next morning I got up and went and worked out, and I'm walking around the grounds, and Eric, you were there, man. Beautiful, man. It was so beautiful. I stand by this. If our company was not here, based here in Austin, I even said this to my wife, I would have come back, sold our home. I would have moved to Palmetto Bluff. I mean, gorgeous place. So I'm walking around, and I see this huge tree with this beautiful, like just movie type swing hanging from it. And I go sit on the swing, and immediately I sit down, Eric, and I think to myself, I wonder if any slaves ever hung from this tree, any Black people ever hung from this tree. And then I start looking around. I'm like, man, this was a working plantation. So then it got deeper, Eric. I started looking around, and I know you saw this as well. 90 to 95% of the workers at that resort were Black.
Yep.
And the other thing, I don't know if you picked up on this, most of them had accents, and they were Caribbean accents. And so it hit me. I'm like, oh, wow. How did we used to bring slaves to this country before? We imported them. So all these people working here right now are from the Caribbean, imported to work here. And it hit me. I'm like, oh, man, this is deep. And so I started thinking to myself, okay, so the only real difference now is, okay, they get paid a little bit, and I guess they get to come and go as they want to. That's the difference. And then my last piece on it, Eric, I remember I said this to my wife. I go down this path with me. I said, if we're in a helicopter right now, back during slavery, and I say, of course, helicopters didn't exist. I said, but just go with me on this. And we're looking down from the helicopter. What do we see? We see Black people moving white cotton, picking cotton, moving it bag to bag, harvesting the cotton. I go, so now let's go up in the helicopter today and look down. And what do we see? We see Black people moving white cotton sheets, white cotton tablecloths. I go, did it really change? And she goes, how do you think? I go, that's what I see. I said, I see that I'm one of the few people of color that are actually staying at this resort right now. And yeah, it was moving, man, because just putting all that together, and I guess having never been on an actual former plantation before, it was very moving. And you know this, when I shared at the conference, so many people, what I appreciated, so many people said, man, I never thought about that. And I say this respectfully because you've never had to. And that's the key.
Yeah.
We have to respect and listen to others' lived lives. We have to ask questions, listen, learn, seek to understand. And that's what's happening with us as a people in this country right now is no one's listening. No one wants to learn. No one wants to seek to understand. We form our own opinions and we think we're right.
No, I totally agree with you. And to me, it's also part of history and memory. When I see some people willing to cancel stuff, to erase the past or change names, and I personally think, no, I want us to be there. I want people to wonder, what was it? Why is it called like that? What was happening? And of course, I take extreme example, but I don't want people to destroy Auschwitz. Right. I want people to be able to go and see what happened. I want to be able to have a Black person telling me about what was happening because there's a sign, because there's a statue, because there's a building that has a history, and they can enlighten me. That's how, coming from Belgium, I first heard about driving while Black, which I would have never imagined.
Yeah.
It's all those things, to your point, when people listen to each other, respect each other, and want to inquire about each other's history, that we will get better.
It's interesting you said that too, Eric, and I'll speak fairly from the other side of that perspective as well. While I don't agree, many of those statues that we pulled down should have been in town squares and in the middle of the city and things of that nature. I also don't believe they should be destroyed. They should be put in their proper place, maybe a museum or what, because there's a story within that statue as well. So to just try to destroy it and erase history, that's bullshit in itself, because it's still part of the history that, let's not, you always hear history repeats itself. Well, when you try to eliminate it as if it's not there and the next generation doesn't get to learn why that came to be, you now put yourself in danger of repeating history. Totally. So don't erase it. Don't glorify it in the middle of the town square, in the middle of the city, but definitely don't destroy it.
Absolutely. Excuse me for not remembering who said that. It's not me, but that's a quote I put in my book. What we learn from history is that we don't learn from history.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. JeVon, I would spend hours talking with you. I really love you, man. I love everything you are talking about and what you represent. Just in closing for today, where do we go from here? As leaders and companies, they say that in 2027, the majority of the workforce in the US will be freelancers. How do we go here with different generations, with the economic around us to lead companies and to make people better?
For me, Eric, I believe it's interesting. I'll steal a piece off of someone's comment on one of my LinkedIn posts. They said that my points of view were dynamic and fundamentally different than how we operate. And it said, why should someone buy in? What's in it for them? And my response was that right there is part of the problem with our country. There should be no buy-in or what's in it for them on to do the right thing. You do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And what we also need to be better at as a society, as a people, is bringing change before events happen. We're very reaction. We react in this country. Or something like, and I'll give you one of the most disgusting examples of this, Eric. The 9 Black people who got shot in church during Bible study by the white kid. And what I found just to be disgusting, what performative empathy, if you will, is then shortly thereafter, the governor said that the Confederate flag had to be taken off of the Capitol building. You never took time to consider that maybe you should have done that before 9 people died. But, and again, that's not to say that those murders would not have happened, but we do things in reaction versus doing the right thing beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to do the right thing beforehand. Listen, learn, seek to understand. How do we improve? How do we do right by all people, not just this exclusionary playbook that's been put together? How do we do right by all people?
JeVon, recently was my birthday and somebody said, I'm glad you were born for this world. And I thought it was very nice. I am telling you that. I'm glad you were born for this world. You're an amazing person, an amazing leader. I truly enjoy a conversation. I'm looking forward to many more. And for today, again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
My man, Eric, it was an honor, man. I look forward to catching up again. And next time we're at a conference together, we'll have to spend more time.
Great pleasure.
Thanks, Eric.
JeVon, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your life, your professional life, your personal life, and all those examples. You're a true inspiration. Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to connect with me, please follow me on LinkedIn or join the Facebook group www.eventbusinessformula.com/group. And please share this amazing conversation with all your network. I think that more people can listen to JeVon, the better this world will be. Thank you.